Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Let's get ready for another reading vlog. As you may have seen a couple of weeks ago, I am trying to narrow down some of the books on my Goodreads want to read list because it is over 900 and I would like to get it under 900. I'd like to get it under 800, so I should probably go through it soon and actually remove some more. But in an effort to get through that list and read the books that I say I actually want to, I'm going to be picking 4 books off of that list to read in this video. And I need to acquire those books and I need to figure out what they are. We are going to look at... Ooh, I was on TikTok. I'm going to acquire the 2 lowest and the 2 highest rated books on my Goodreads want to read list. And we'll read them. I'm a little bit nervous because I think I know what the highest rated is. Should I just come up with a prediction? I would like to read the Lord of the Rings series. So I think I have the first one on my list. Let's see if I'm right. To read, 917 books are on my want to read list. Let's go by average rating. Let's figure out what we're reading. The highest are at the top, so we're gonna start with those. The first book is a memoir, it looks like. Not what I expected. Okay, I marked this as want to read over a year ago, June 2023. It has 13 reviews, 59 ratings. I gotta follow the rules, right? I gotta follow the rules. So that's book 1. Second book we're reading has 10 ratings. What's going on? In the Shadow of the Kogenon. We're reading it. So the 2 highest rated books each have less than 20 reviews. You know what? I don't discriminate. I'm gonna read them. Hey, just checking in to say the 2 highest rated books on my Goodreads I can't find anywhere except for on Kindle. Library doesn't have them. Bookstore doesn't have them. So scratch that. Went for the next 2 highest rated ones that I could find. I think that someone in the mail truck wrote on my package or something because this doesn't belong here. So I don't know what this means. Let's open this together to see what we're reading instead. Oh, there's the thing. First one is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. I am actually surprised I haven't read this before. I have wanted to read it for a while and I just haven't. So this, I think, is the highest rated book, the 3rd highest rated, but obviously one with more ratings than the one that we were looking at before, because those ones only had like, what, 10 and 13, which is still totally viable, and like I will read them hopefully one day, but obviously these ones have thousands, tens of thousands, who knows if it's even more. This is a memoir by Chanel Miller, who was sexually assaulted. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard of this. I am looking forward to reading it. I hear it is amazing and that she is an amazing writer. I'm a bit nervous about the other one because it's huge. And I almost feel like I have to finish the 3rd book in a trilogy that I have not read yet to start this one. It's The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. This guy is chunky. Wow, how many pages is this? I also have on my book bingo to read an over 1,000-page book. Am I close? Oh, you know.
Okie dokie, sorry to hear about that.
This is over 1,000 pages. I'm gonna get that book bingo. People have said you don't have to finish Mistborn before reading this book, but I believe it comes first in the world because they're set in the same world, and you'll understand this book more if you've finished that one. So I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm nervous to start another Brandon Sanderson series. I'm way more happy to be reading these 2 than the ones that came up as the highest rated. I'm still surprised that Lord of the Rings didn't come up, but that's okay. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Now let's reverse it and see the lowest rated. Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. I think this is gonna be weird. And Acts of Service by Lillian Fishman. Okay. So those are the 4 books we're going to be reading in this video. Honestly, don't know anything about any of them. I'm not sure why I added them to this want to read list. This is why I should go through it again. So I'm going to acquire the books. I don't know if I want to buy any of them. They might all try to be library books. Stay tuned and we'll see how this goes. So now that we have acquired all of the books, I started reading Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca yesterday. And I am, I think, like 100 pages in. I'd say about a 1/3 of the way. And I didn't realize it's like 2 novellas put together and then like a little short story at the end that coincides with it. Out of 922 books, this is the lowest rated on that list at 2.94 average rating, which at this point I'm a little bit confused by because I don't think it's the worst book I've ever read by far. Let me just start by saying that. Also, I got that list way down. I went through all of my books over the last week and now there's like 650 or something on my list. So that's great. There are even a few that I have downloaded on my Kindle that I got for free that I'm debating taking off. But anyway, this book. So we start with an author's note saying, oh, I know that the murder of this young woman just happened and we don't really know what's happening and the trial is still going, so this is all the information I'm allowed to give you. And I fell for it and I googled if this is based on a true story, and it's not. So that's the author making an author's note of the book that he's pretending someone else wrote. All of it is emails and instant messages back and forth. There's no actual dialogue, it's just them emailing each other and having an online relationship, and it is set in the year 2000. So that's also kind of telling for this era of emailing. We start with Agnes, and she has posted an heirloom from her family on a site for sale, and she's like, I just need to make rent this month, so I'm starting to sell some stuff. And Zoe responds to her ad and it's like, how about I just help you out because I have more than enough money and you should keep this thing that's really special to you. And then they grow a bit of a friendship, and that friendship evolves quite quickly. I think it's a little bit too quickly that it just kind of jumps to this next thing. Maybe we will see why when we see more of their personalities, because it's kind of coming out at this point where I'm like, oh, it's making sense a little bit. They come up with this contract where Agnes has to do whatever Zoe wants and Zoe will pay her. It's interesting because it's over email. They've never met. Yeah, it's like just a little bit offbeat, all of these things that she's making her do. And it definitely reads as if it's two different people, which I also really appreciate when that happens. I've said that before. Agnes is very philosophical and poetic and artistic. I can just tell. And Zoe is just a little bit more to the point. I had to stop reading last night. It was like 8:30 and I got to a really weird part that maybe was a little bit too offbeat for me. Agnes kind of seemed to be romanticizing this news story she had heard about a boy killing his brother, and it got a little bit too real in the descriptions that she was giving. I needed to put the book down. I actually really like the format of the emails. I'm not sure if it will stay that way the whole time or if they'll meet. I didn't reread the author's note at the beginning. I think it gave away some information that I kind of forget because I was too engrossed with wondering if it was a true story. I'm gonna leave that out of my mind and not go back to it because I kind of like not knowing. I'm actually really happy with how I'm feeling because I tend to go into books with low ratings just with a negative mindset, trying to make that bias go out of my head because I know that I like books that other people don't and that I really don't like books that are really popular sometimes. I am going to keep that in my mind and keep reading. Okay, so I actually just read 50 more pages, which took 15 minutes because they're very short when it's an email, right? It's like pages like this. And I finished the first short story, so I may as well just finish talking about it. I said WTF multiple times while I was reading the end of that. I wish I actually would have just finished it yesterday and had like one concise story altogether. I don't actually have much to add. I just thought I'd let you know that I finished it and that it stayed weird and offbeat, but still not in a way that I wanted to stop reading it or that I think it's a bad rating. I haven't read too many novellas, so now I'm like, if I just had to rate this story on its own, what would I give it? Probably like a 3.5. Okay, it was gross. It was a bit gross, but not in like a gory way. Just offbeat. Just not something that I've ever read before, and it made me feel a little bit because there was some talk of bugs at one point and I got grody. It's definitely horror, but it's definitely mental health space horror, which I guess actually most is, just this is in a different way than those. All I'm gonna say is I'm surprised at the low rating, and I thought that the writing was interesting, and I think it could be like a Black Mirror episode maybe. Take that as you will. I just flipped to the second one though, and it's written as a real story, so I'm curious how the writing will change. I'm going to get on with my work day and then hopefully read the second short story tonight. It's the next day and I finished. Things have gotten worse since we last spoke. The second story is about a couple who have lost their son. So they move to this island to be the winter caretakers just to kind of get away, and then some weird surrealism stuff happens. I would say it definitely is not occurring in our world. It feels a little bit fantasy. Yesterday I couldn't stop reading it. Like, I'm glad that I set aside the time to read it in one sitting because I definitely needed to. I think I would also give it a 3.5. It felt a little bit more disjointed than the first one, which is interesting because it was written as a novel and not like email correspondence. So yeah, I gave the second one a 3.5 as well. And then there's just like a 50-page, not even, maybe like a 30-page short story at the end. You'll find it's like that all over. That was definitely the worst of the three, which makes sense because there's not much time to dedicate to it. Probably closer to like a 3. I'm glad I read it. It brings me out of my comfort zone just a little bit. I'm also glad I got it from the library instead of buying it. There is an overarching theme in all of these of manipulation, which always makes me feel a little bit icky to read, no matter what kind of setting and what kind of book it's in. You just want to talk to the people being manipulated and just kind of shake them out of it. Book 1, 3.5 is what I rounded up to 4 on Goodreads because I feel like it needs a little bit of love. I am feeling slightly annoyed because I already filmed this and something went wrong with my mic settings and there was no audio. So I finished Acts of Service, the second worst rated on my Goodreads. Yeah, I finished this a week ago and I did a midday check-in of how it was going and then I did my review and my recap of it and I don't have any of the audio. We're gonna redo that. I'm glad that this left enough of a mark on me that I can remember it a week later because sometimes when there's a really bad book, that's a lie. Sometimes when there's a mediocre book and you don't really have feelings on it, you can't actually regurgitate any of them, but I have been thinking about this a couple of times in the last week. This book follows Eve and it is described as her kind of discovering her sexual awakening and her independence and doing what she wants to do because she wants to do it. But right off the get-go, I thought the actual description is woman feels sexual incompatibility with her girlfriend and decides to cheat on her because that's essentially what it was. So she posts some photos of herself online and gets a response, enters into this polygamous situation with another couple and finds herself very connected to the man, which is interesting to her because she has known since she was a teenager that she's a lesbian. So she's like, okay, I guess I'm rediscovering my sexual identity. And it's the cheating part that really got me, but whatever, is actually not a main plot point to the story in a good way. Because sometimes I'll start a book that has cheating in it and I'll just stop reading it because it actually really bothers me. And I didn't get that much of an ick from it. It's because you kind of are feeling this character's realizations coming and she is a very selfish person and actually kind of an unbearable main character. In that way, I'm surprised that I enjoyed this book as much as I did and read it in a full day because it is rare for me to find a book good when it has that unbearable of a main character. Plus, I think I couldn't put it down just because the writing itself is so poetic and the flow is wonderful. And it skips part of the stories that you would expect to be there, but does it in a very interesting way that definitely works to add to the flow. Though I do want to say that every page has something taboo on it. It's very much the mental regurgitation of all of her thoughts as she's going through this relationship. There are no quotation marks in this book, which usually I'm mostly okay with, but this one I think has a little bit too much dialogue to get away with it easily. It goes along with the mental regurgitation that she was doing where it just kind of flows throughout the whole book, so it made sense, but I still didn't really like it. I think it kind of is interesting that I read this right after the short stories that I read because those ones had a theme of manipulation and this definitely does too. I would say that Nathan, this man that she gets in this relationship with, is very charismatic and manipulative, and it kind of felt like she was being pulled into a small cult. Like, it was so weird. I believe her that he was really charming and difficult to say no to, but I think it could have done maybe a better job at describing that part of him because he kind of just made me feel icky. But maybe that's the point, but I don't think it's the point because it's all from her perspective and she didn't feel icky from him, so why would I? You know, that part I'm kind of grappling with. This book reveals a lot about feminism and how women are indoctrinated into these systems where we find our self-worth in our bodies or our looks or what we can bring to other people. That was my favorite part of the whole narrative. Like, Eve is pretty afraid to get old and feel like she won't know what her worth is to these people around her who still find her very attractive. It definitely also really poses the question the whole time of, do we want what we want because we were told to, or because we actually want these things, and why do we want these things? And she kind of comes to this realization pretty close to the beginning that she's just going to do what she wants and then figure out later why she wanted it. I don't know if that makes sense, but it is pretty interesting, and there's a lot of just open-ended questions that are brought up in this book. I'm curious if I read it in 5 years what my feelings would be then, because now I'm so mad at myself that I relate to an unbearable character in some ways, and in others I'm like, oh, I wouldn't even be your friend. So not completely, but in the questions that she is posing to herself and to the reader, I feel like I've questioned about half of these things myself. It's not something that you can just mindlessly read. Definitely not. I can tell why people might not like it and why it might not have a very high rating. I think it's like 3.06 or something. I gave it 4 stars. The fact that I've been thinking about it for about a week, I'm going to recommend that people do read it if they don't find like the immoral parts of it bad, because obviously for some people you know where your own line is, and if you don't want to read a book that talks about sex and questions all of these things the whole time, obviously don't read it. But if you're open to dwelling on those questions, definitely worth it. So that's the second book. I'm just glad I didn't bring it back to the library yet so I could still hold it while I talked about it. We are going up in the ratings, and the second highest rated book on my Goodreads want to read list was Know My Name by Chanel Miller, and I'm about halfway through this book, and it's taking me a long time to read. I think the first day I read like 16 pages and I felt very heavy and I was going to bed and I was like, you know what, this is not a before bed book. And then the next time I read it, I was at my parents' house doing some laundry. I had made it not even 100 pages yet and I was already crying multiple times. So that gives you a sense of the feel of this book. So this is written by Chanel Miller, and she is, let me say what she says, because she is very conscious of her word choices in this book, and I think that's very important. I actually think the foreword in this book is very good. In January 2015, I was 22, living and working in my hometown of Palo Alto, California. I attended a party at Stanford. I was sexually assaulted outside on the ground. 2 bystanders saw it, stopped him, saved me. My old life left me and a new one began. I will use Brock's name, but the truth is he could be Brad or Brody or Benson, and it doesn't matter. The point is not their individual significance, but their commonality. All of the people enabling a broken system. This is an attempt to transform the hurt inside myself, to confront a past and find a way to live with and incorporate these memories. I want to leave them behind so I can move forward. In not naming them, I finally named myself. My name is Chanel. I am a victim. I have no qualms with this word, only with the idea that it is all that I am. However, I am not Brock Turner's victim. I'm not his anything. I don't belong to him. It's making me emotional again. It gives you like a sense of exactly the strength that it took her to write this book. A lot of it that is the most touching is obviously the personal parts of it. The fact that she is seeing the statistics while she's going through it. She's like, I saw a poster that says 1 in 4 women. And all these people who were called to jury duty, they said, leave if you've been sexually assaulted, and a lot of the women left. Like, it's very eye-opening for her and for me. The way that she discusses her experiences, specifically in Philadelphia, where she was staying after with her boyfriend, while she's preparing for this trial. And she's like, I see all of my life experiences differently now because you could tell that she's having trauma responses to people talking to her. This is heavy. And a lot of it is word vomit in a really wonderful way, like run-on sentences and things that don't connect thoughts, because it's exactly the way that her mind was going at the time. So I'm at the point I'm at right now. We are in the trial, like it just started, about halfway through page 180. I'm in the middle of a chapter, but there was a natural break. But all of the other stuff is just literally the time from when it happened and following that, and what she was doing with her life and not working and being depressed and just trying to compartmentalize her life. She's like, the people knew me as Emily Doe, but I knew myself as Chanel. And when I was talking about court, I was Emily. And when I was not, I was totally separate and trying to keep these things separate. But then going to therapy helps her realize that they are totally together. It's awful because I'm at the part now where the defense attorney is kind of grilling her, and he is a huge dick. He's a huge dick. She says this is not a personal attack. I'll never use his name. He is the defense attorney. That's what his job is. That's his role. But he's a jerk. I don't know who this man is, but I want to punch him in the face. Yeah, I'm about halfway. I think I'm going to try to finish this today or tomorrow. We'll see what the timeline looks like. I haven't done too much reading the last 5 days just because there's been lots going on and it was difficult for me to keep picking it up. But I feel like the point I'm at now, I kind of can't stop because it's in the thick of it. The funny thing about that is she had to wait very long to go through the whole court proceedings, and I'm just going to read it in a day, and that feels wrong somehow. But I'm going to keep going. This is a lot. It has been a few days. I have finished Know My Name by Chanel Miller. I have highlighted the shit out of this book. This was a hard read, which made it an important read. I think everybody should read this book. I think I will come back to this book. I am immediately lending it to my sister. She asked if she could read it next, and I said, please do. It's kind of one of those books that like I don't have a lot to say because it is what it is, and you have to read the heartbreak to understand the heartbreak, and I was so angry all the time. I'm glad that she could be a voice to get things kind of in a nudge in the right direction, even though obviously it's not there yet. I have to say, speaking of that, there are a lot of 1-star reviews on Goodreads, and they're all like, oh, I don't want shit to get all political and talk about Trump. Mind you, it's 4-5 pages mentioning that this man who is in a position of power was definitely overheard and overtly talked about sexually assaulting a woman, multiple women, and now is a convicted felon since this. It's important that it's in this book because these are the leaders that are being elected. So how is Emily Doe supposed to make a difference and achieve anything and believe that it wasn't her fault if these are the people being put in power? You know, I think it's important. And to all those people who left 1-star reviews because of that, you didn't get the book. So I am rating this 4 stars, which feels like pain. I don't think I would have rated this book if I wasn't literally doing a video that is my lowest and highest rated books and reading this because of the high rating. And given that the only reason I wouldn't is because I kind of feel guilty giving a 4-star rating to this book. People are not going to understand why it's 4 stars. And honestly, it's because it's still a book and it's not necessarily my favorite writing style. I think it makes sense for the book itself. Like, she gets very repetitive, and I understand that it's because this is something that she had to keep repeating herself and reading things over and over and being asked the same questions over and over, so I understand. It just isn't my favorite writing style, but it was very captivating. It is a book that I'm going to come back to. It made me feel a lot of emotions, mostly anger and sadness. I cried a lot, but mostly frustrated tears. So that's where I'm sitting with this one. So we're on to our final book in this video. We are reading The Brick, The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Let me just double check what this one is rated right now. 4.67. Is that the same rating? No, the Chanel Miller book went up since I last checked because I believe this one was the highest. Maybe I'm gonna eat my words and that's wrong.
You are made of stupid.
But I read about 20 pages yesterday and about 20 pages the day before and some today. So I'm just about to start chapter 5 of this book and I am very confused. It is 1,000 pages. I have read about 80 pages and there's no main character on the back. This is the one phrase I'm gonna read you, the one little paragraph. There are 4 whom we watch. The first is the surgeon, forced to forsake healing to fight in the most brutal war of our time. The second is the assassin, a murderer who weeps as he kills. The third is the liar, a young woman who wears a scholar's mantle over the heart of a thief. The last is the prince, a warlord whose eyes have opened to the ancient past as his thirst for battle wanes. I just kept reading a new character and going back and being like, which one is this? And reading it, and which one is this? And I think we've met 3 of the 4, but now that I'm saying that, I think we've met all 4 and just don't know that the one is the one because it's from like the prologue, now that I'm thinking about it. Like 15,000 years earlier or some shit like that. I'm enjoying it because the only thing I've read from Brandon Sanderson is the first 2 Mistborn books, and I really liked them, but I found the fighting scenes a little bit difficult to get through, and everything else is really good. I love his characterization, and again, I'm already loving the characterization. And the description of this totally in-depth fantasy world is good because I can visualize the things that he's talking about because he introduces them like just at the right speed where it's not too slow, but it's not like thrown at you all at once. And my favorite thing so far about this book is there's these little, let me just make sure I get the name right, Spren. There are Spren in this book, and there are Fear Spren and Wind Spren and Rain Spren, and they're like these little fairies that like wreak havoc and have fun wherever they go, and it's very Tinkerbell-esque in my head. I think they're very cool because it's like you can tell when people are afraid if they're like on the ground because the fear spren start crawling over their feet and stuff like that. So that's really the only thing I have to say so far because I'm 80 pages into a 1,000-page book. Like, I'm not even 10% of the way through. I was hoping to read as much of this as I could over the weekend, and I just don't think I'm gonna have as much time as I think I am. So I'm gonna read as much as I can now, and I'm hoping to get, I don't want to say anything crazy. I was going to say 300 pages in before we start hanging out with our friends tomorrow. And then I would like this video to go up by next Friday. I could read this book in a week. It's just like Monday, I have dinner plans with a friend. So that just gives me Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which is actually not a lot for 1,000 pages. That's not your problem. If you see this video, and it's Friday, then I did it. And if you see this video and it's a Saturday or a Sunday, you know, shut up. Let's keep reading.
Ooh. Say ooh.
Should we sit outside? Okay, so my goal yesterday was to get to 300 pages, and I am now at page 295 today. So it's 2 days later. It's already the evening. So didn't quite achieve that goal, but I am going to read mostly today and the rest of the week as much as I can. I am still quite confused at times, but I'll try to give you the plot as I understand it. You just start with one of the main characters that is spoken about on the back of the book, which we already talked about. And you're kind of following all of these different characters in this world of war. So it has been a few years since the king was murdered. There's this ongoing war because of it, because they're trying to get vengeance. His son, who is now the king, is trying to avenge his name. And you're kind of just following a few different characters in this war, whether they are highborn or not. There's a slave, there's a prince, there's all these different characters. And I'm trying to actually, because I read online that you kind of have to finish the Mistborn trilogy before you read this, which I didn't do. I've only read the first two. It's not that you have to because it gives you hints, but it's like, oh, it takes place in the same world, so it's helpful. And I'm trying to understand how it takes place in that world. I think there's one connection that I can kind of find, but it's like super minuscule. So my feelings are that this is way after, but I could be wrong. This could be before. So you're kind of just following characters in their day-to-day through this war, all different types of characters. So light eyes are higherborn, and then dark eyes are lowerborn. There's also like these other weird cultural things like women read and write, men cannot. It is seen as super weird if men can read and write. So if they see writing, they're like, I don't know what that says, let's hide it and bring it to the women and let them read it for us. So their wives and their friends' wives and women are with them always. They are the scholars, which is very interesting to me because it portrays it in a sexist way, but in our mind we're like, wow, they're the highly educated, but it's seen as below men to be educated that way. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic there. The point I'm at now, there is some foreshadowing for something that I'm not enjoying, but if I've learned anything from the first two Mistborn books is that Brandon Sanderson does some false foreshadowing. So you're like, oh, I'm not excited for this thing that he's showing coming, and then totally something different happens. So I'm hoping that's what happens here, because I haven't read enough of his books to know if that's common or if the foreshadowing actually means something. But if it follows that path, I'm going to be annoyed, and I know it's important for the story, and it does make sense, and it's very Game of Thrones-esque foreshadowing. Shallan is my favorite character, and we're not getting enough of her. At the beginning of every part, it tells you which characters you're going to be reading from the perspective of, which is interesting. The part that's shitty is that I'm on part 2, and it is from page 180 to like 430, and it's these 3 characters, and they are not my favorite. I like Kaladin. He is definitely, I would say, the main character of this story, and I like that. I think that he is a good main character, and he's very interesting and very dynamic, and we're learning more about his personality as we go, and he has this little sidekick that I love. He's like trying to lead this team that doesn't want to be led, so he's trying to get some momentum going and make them feel like a brotherhood, and it's very difficult for him, and it's interesting to read. Not a High Lord, so he doesn't have that sway, but he wants to have that sway of a leader, and so I actually really appreciate his part. Here's my problem. I fear I'm reading this at the wrong time to get the full potential out of it. I'm looking at my TBR cart and I'm so excited by some of these books on there. My brain wants something higher paced because of all of the slower paced books I've been reading. So I'm like, finally I have a fantasy, but I really shouldn't have expected a 1,000-page book to be fast paced. My brain is not in the right part, and I really, really wish that I wanted to read this more and that I was just totally locked in, and I'm not, and I find that really unfortunate because I really want to be. All of me is like, oh, this would be such a good book to be locked into, but I'm just not. Like, it feels like I'm reading a story about ancient war with some glowing money and some storms and some Sprens. The Sprens are still very cool. That is my current feelings about 30% of the way through, so I need to double my speed, and now I have work for the next 4 days, so that's gonna be a little bit difficult, but I'm gonna do my best. But I'm not ready to switch to the audiobook. I am wanting to read this and get the full immersive experience. I do wish I was in a different mindset right now. So that's all I'm saying. Let's hope it improves. Let's keep reading and go from there. Okay, Okay, I am like 450 pages through, so almost halfway. I'm gonna get to work in a few minutes here now. But I really enjoyed this little section that I just went through. It's the second one of its type, and they are interludes, and then it tells you whose parts they are. I like it because it kind of fills in gaps that you didn't know were there, and now I'm feeling like something is gonna happen that's gonna surprise me. It is very well thought out, this book. Everything pieces together, and I just know that there's this underlying thing that is going to just be completely shocking. Sorry, there is construction and there is a dryer on and I'm overstimulated, and I hope that my mic is only picking me up for you. Yeah, there's all of these little things that are just piecing together, and I think I said the last section I wasn't excited to read it, and I tried to get it done because I didn't like 2 of the 3 characters that we were reading about, but then it got really good and now I'm gonna miss them. But the next section is Kaladin and Shallan, and they are my 2 favorite characters in the book, because we finally get a woman's perspective again. And these gender differences are actually getting kind of annoying in a very funny way. Like, the women are not allowed to show their left hand, it's their safe hand, so it's always like in a glove or with a long sleeve or something. We're learning a lot more about the High Lords and the Light Eyes and all of the different rules that they have, and the way it might be backwards. And then there's this group of people that they're fighting. They're fighting the Parshendi people, and they're described as like marbled red and black, and I just keep picturing them all as Darth Maul, which I know is probably not what they actually look like, but that's what I'm picturing, so that's kind of funny. And I think we're gonna find out some crazy stuff in the second half of this book, so I'm kind of sad that I'm gonna go to work now and can't keep reading. That is my update. It's a small update because I feel like I'm still confused, I guess is what I'm saying, and everything is just gonna come together at once, and all of the stuff that I'm like, where is this going, is going to make sense, and I know that, but it's a lot of information to keep in my brain, but I'm trying my best, and very war heavy. So like, how do you explain this war? And I don't want to give stuff away because it's all very intricate, and I think I've had fun learning the little nuances, so I don't really want to just say what they are, you know? I'm gonna go to work now. I just got to the end of part 3, page 700, and something crazy just happened. I was all ready to say that I am not so into the dual timeline aspect. It's not huge, but every few chapters it'll be like, oh, 6 years ago, and then 5 years ago, and now it's 1 year ago, and finally it led up to something worth waiting for. I am kind of shocked at it, and now I'm getting another interludes with 3 short stories. Okay, so Kaladin is throughout the whole book. I think we haven't had a section without his perspective, which is good because he's the best part to read. Before I had said that Shallan's was my favorite, but she kind of wore on me as a character. I'm wondering if the next part will have some more connection in it, because right now everyone's stories are pretty set apart from one another. You just kind of get snippets of how they might interact with each other, but otherwise it's just like all these separate timelines happening at the same time, and I'm waiting for it to come together. I don't know how many times I should come in and talk during a 1,000-page book, because it's a crazy big book, but it's still going with the same story. I'm still confused half the time. There's so many intricacies that I think are going to have to be remembered at the end either, or in maybe the next book, which is a little bit concerning. But I am loving the art in here also. So at the beginning of like multiple chapters, it will have something that's either talked about in the chapter or related to the book somehow. Like Shallan is, I'm guessing she drew that. She's an artist. So a lot of them will reference her art. And I think that's really, really cool. It's wild things are happening, and my rating is slowly going back up as I read. I have about 300 pages left, and I am so curious where this is gonna go and how everything is going to connect. I'm still curious how it connects to Mistborn, to be honest. I don't know if I'm missing something super obvious or not, but I'm not really seeing how it connects. I finally finished The Way of Kings. Honestly, I have to say again, I wish I read it when I would have been in the right mood for it, because it would have been an easy 5 stars. And the problem is, the last quarter of this book is wild. The people I loved changed, the stories blossomed the way I knew they would, and that things would come together, and that all of this information you're given finally all of a sudden in like 2 chapters makes so much sense, and it's the reason you read the whole book. I'm so surprised that I read a 1,000-page book and never once thought this is boring. I just wasn't in the fantasy world building mindset, and that's my own fault. I'm giving it 4.5 because I think in my brain when I finished I was like, this is so flippin' good, but throughout I was thinking it was a 4, so I'm gonna give it the credit that it's due and rate it 4.5. All I want to do is read the second book. All I want to do is read the second book. I don't own it, and this one I didn't buy on sale. It was $35. Like, I don't want to spend almost $40 on another book right now. I already like this series better than Mistborn, I think. Not that I'm trying to pit them against each other, but I think he wrote this earlier, and I preferred the writing, and the characterization was amazing. Just the way that things came together, and the way that I loved the characters, and I cried at the end, and I can't believe that I thought Dalinar's part was boring before, and then at the end it was the most gripping part. I was talking about foreshadowing in one of my updates, and I said that I thought that this foreshadowing was really obvious, and I hope that he was going to take it another way. And I will say it did not happen the way that I thought it would, and I think that how he wrote that in was very smart and very clever. I also said a few times that this book was still confusing me, and that's true, but it was more the world building, and I'm actually amazed that he could have this many characters with unusual fantasy names, and I didn't get confused by them once. The way that he introduced them, and that they interacted with other people, and that they were all unique people was kind of a breath of fresh air for a first book in a large fantasy series. It really just hones in on the fact that humans are variable, and this book has a lot of characters who are trying not to be hypocritical, but understand that their views have changed, or that their actions should be different, or that they behaved in an improper way before, and they try to change it. And I think that that is not something you see in books at all very often. There's always like protagonist, antagonist, fight, good guy wins, but this is like human nature, and people make mistakes and they can improve themselves, and I think that that is just a wonderful thing to bring through a fantasy book that reads as a historical fiction with an ancient war. That is my final thoughts on this. I understand that I didn't talk too much about the plot or what's happening, but it's like I said before, the intricacies of it are all very important, and I loved everything that I slowly learned, and so I don't want to give anything away, because I think that it is all written in such a way that you have to learn it from the book and not from someone talking about the book. But my review is very good and can't wait to continue. So thank you for coming with me. I'm very happy that all of these books, the lowest average rated and the highest average rated, I enjoyed all of them to some extent. There was good in all of them. My lowest rating for 3.5 for a book that was rated closer to 2.5. That's pretty good. I'm gonna chalk this up as success. Come back next time for another vlog. I will see you then. Thanks.